Hi everyone, this is Tevi live from Franklin. It's a beautiful Sunday. This is Civil Rights Movement Part 3, and on this first slide I'm just going to talk about the theme for today. We're looking at, how does the Civil Rights Movement challenge segregation. So we'll look at some sit-ins, the Freedom Riders, we'll look at violence in Birmingham, the role of the Kennedys, both JFK and Robert, James Meredith and Ole Miss, the University of Mississippi, and the famous March on Washington. So guys, under your guided notes, Civil Rights Movement Part 3, let's look at, for challenging segregation, the sit-in movement for the next slide. You guys, so here are 4 young African Americans: Joseph McNeil, Etzel Blair Jr., David Richmond, and Franklin McCain. So guys, these students decided to sit at a whites-only lunch counter in a nearby Woolworth's department store. So guys, they were very afraid, but they still felt excited because by the end of the week, over 300 students, were taking part in these sit-ins. And this really spread. It was another spark. So by 1961, guys, there were sit-ins in more than 100 cities throughout the South. So, let me ask you, would you risk your personal safety to participate in a sit-in? What would you do if you had to sit there while people dumped food over your heads? How would you react? So after you think about your response, let's go on to, guys, the sit-ins offered a way for idealistic and energetic young people to really take matters into their own hands and get involved in the civil rights struggle. And so leaders of the NAACP and the SCLC, that was the Christian leaders, they were nervous, guys, that this sit-in campaign might have difficulty remaining nonviolent, right? So if you're provoked, how do you not respond? How do you turn the other cheek? So the students, however, did prove these leaders out wrong, because they were heckled, punched, kicked, beaten, burned with cigarettes and hot coffee, but they did not fight back. And so guys, their heroic behavior really grabbed the nation's attention. So this leadership really was worthy of forming their own group. So guys, please put down, so SNCC does stand for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And so between 1960 and 1965, SNCC, as it's sometimes called, SNCC, helped desegregate public facilities in dozens of southern towns. It also sent volunteers into rural areas in the Deep South to register African Americans to vote. So here is their logo and one of their advertisements from the 1960s. Okay, so why the Deep South? So guys, rural African Americans really faced violence if they tried to register to vote. But despite the danger, guys, many SNCC volunteers did go to Mississippi. In 1964, it's called Freedom Summer, and that's where they would help them register to vote. So here's a great picture from Freedom Summer. So these are, white and black college students coming down on these buses to help the rural African Americans register to vote. So guys, 3 of the workers were murdered that summer of '64. It is kind of hard to read their names. I do want you guys to look up the names of the 3 students and put them down there under your guided notes. It's been pretty much linked to the KKK, so it just shows you what they were actually up against and how brave these students were. So who was Fannie Lou? She was a SNCC organizer, and she was a sharecropper. She had been evicted from her farm after registering to vote. So guys, she was arrested in Mississippi, and she was severely beaten in jail. But then, once released, she then helped to organize the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. So just another heroine of the time. Alright everyone, let's go on to number 2, the Freedom Riders. So guys, put down in 1961, the first Freedom Riders boarded several southbound interstate buses. So you can check out this map to see their route. But guys, put down the first group did arrive in Alabama, several of the towns, and they faced angry white mobs. So guys, in Birmingham, they faced gangs that had baseball bats, chains, and lead pipes. The head of the police in Birmingham, guys, was Eugene Connor. So guys, his nickname was Bull. Guys, so he claimed that there had been no police at the bus station because it was Mother's Day, and he had given many of his officers the day off. Yet witnesses report, guys, that you couldn't see some people's faces from this mob because of all the blood. And later on, guys, FBI evidence did reveal that Connor had actually contacted the local KKK and told them to beat the Freedom Riders until, quote, it looked like a bulldog got hold of them. So here's a picture of Bull Connor. This violence shocked America. So this was coming less than 4 months after President Kennedy had taken office. And so the question is, how would he get this violence under control? So guys, here's some pictures of JFK and his brother Robert. And they really were on the side of civil rights, though President Kennedy was a little slow in his support, but Robert really was very passionate from the get-go. So guys, Kennedy had put that down under number 3. It's where I am. He had promised to actively support civil rights if elected. His brother Robert F. Kennedy had helped to get Dr. King released from jail, in Georgia. So African Americans really responded to this, guys, and they voted overwhelmingly for Kennedy and really helped Kennedy narrowly win some states such as Illinois. So they definitely backed him. But once in office, guys, Kennedy seemed quite cautious, almost like Eisenhower, and disappointed many African Americans. The truth is, guys, is that he did not want to alienate the Southern senators and anger them, because he needed their support to really push through some new legislation. So he's torn. So you guys can put down, though, that he did, name 40 African Americans to high-level positions in the government. And he even appointed Thurgood Marshall to a federal court in New York, which was really the highest judicial position any African American had served. Remember, this is one step below the Supreme Court. So he did allow the Justice Department, guys, which was run by his brother Robert, to actively go after the South and support the civil rights movement. So Robert F. Kennedy really did try to help African Americans register to vote by filing lawsuits across the South. So he goes at it in a legal way. So the problem is, guys, at the time of the Freedom Riders, Kennedy was planning a meeting with Khrushchev, who's the leader of the Soviet Union. And he did not want his country to appear weak and divided. So guys, even both Kennedys publicly urged the Freedom Riders to cool off, so to speak, and stop the rides. African American leaders, responded that we've been cooling off now for, put down, about 350 years. If we cool off anymore, we'll be in a deep freeze, they said. So they then planned their next ride to Mississippi. So Kennedy made a deal with Senator Eastland from Mississippi to, not use violence against the Freedom Riders. Kennedy said it would be okay to arrest them instead. So many were arrested, and there was a huge cost in order to bail out the Freedom Riders, which their funds could not cover. So to cover it, guys, Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP helped cover the cost with their bail bond fund, and it really allowed the rides to keep going and keep the momentum. So Kennedy, came back from his meeting with Khrushchev and finally realized that they weren't going to stop. So he finally changed his approach, and he ordered the ICC, guys, which is the Interstate Commerce Commission, to. He also ordered the Justice Department, remember, with his brother. So both of those to fight against segregation in bus terminals. So finally, with the support of both brothers, by late 1962, guys, segregation in interstate bus travel had come to an end. Alright, so who's James Meredith and Where is Ole Miss? So I have a couple of pictures here, guys. This is the governor of Mississippi, Ross Barnett. Avid segregationist here. He's flying his Confederate flag. This is James Meredith here, guys. Put down that he was a African-American Air Force veteran. He applied for a transfer to the University of Mississippi, nicknamed Ole Miss. So when he tried to register, at the admissions office, the governor of Mississippi, Ross Barnett, blocked his path. Meredith even had a court order, but Barnett stated, "Never. We will never surrender to the evil and illegal forces of tyranny." So guys, Kennedy sent 500 federal marshals to escort Meredith to campus. An angry white mob, met the marshals, and a full-scale riot erupted. So the mob, hurled rocks, bottles, bricks, and acid at the marshals. The marshals were under orders, guys, to not fire. So even 160 marshals were wounded. So then Kennedy had to order several thousand, federal troops to the campus. And so for the rest of the year, Meredith attended classes under federal guard. So here's an example of the government, federal government, superseding the power of the state government. All right, guys, so number 5, violence in Birmingham. Dr. King decided that to get the federal government to intervene, they had to have a crisis to bargain with. So he launched demonstrations in Birmingham because he knew it would get attention. It was there that Bull O'Connor, was running for mayor. After a few days of protest, guys, King was arrested, and while in jail, he wrote the famous letter from the Birmingham jail. He argued that although protesters were breaking the law, they were following a higher moral law based on divine justice. This is one of the most eloquent defenses of nonviolent protest ever written. And so after King was released, the protests began to grow again. Bull O'Connor, guys, ordered force to be used against the protesters. He ordered the police to use clubs, police dogs, and high-pressure fire hoses on the demonstrators, pictured here. So these images shocked many Americans watching this on the nightly news on television, convincing Kennedy to again try to get a new civil rights bill passed in Congress. Alright, guys, so the last things we'll do under number 6, I'm going to read 2 short excerpts of the famous speech by President Kennedy to the White House in June of 1963, only a few months before he's assassinated, and also the famous excerpt of the I Have a Dream speech from King's March on Washington. So what I want you guys to do, guys, on the guided notes, this speech, guys, put down, announced his civil rights bill, and Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech during the March on Washington, where over 200,000 protesters met at the Lincoln Memorial. It's kind of important that it's Lincoln. So I want you guys to note any similar themes in these 2 speeches, and then we'll wrap it up. So guys, quote, "The heart of the question is whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we want to be treated. If an American, because of the color of his skin, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, if he cannot send his children to the best public school available, if he cannot vote for the public officials who represent him, then who among us would be content to have the color of his skin changed and stand in his place? 100 years of delay have passed since President Lincoln freed the slaves, yet their heirs, their grandsons, are not fully free. And this nation, for all of its hopes and all of its boasts, will not be fully free until all its citizens are free. Now the time has come for this nation to fulfill its promise." So think about those themes and then just compare them to Dr. King. I just gave you a short excerpt, guys. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day all on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. When all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last." Alright guys, this is Tevi signing off.